As a curious pet owner, have you ever taken to the internet for more information? Maybe you want to know why your pet is itchy and what you can do about it. Maybe you're frustrated about the ear infections. Maybe you're looking for ways to make veterinary care more affordable. Instead of wading through a sea of information that may not be reliable and in some cases may be harmful, here is what your vet wants you to know. I'm Dr. Brittany Lancellotti, board-certified veterinary dermatology specialist. Join me to get the information you're looking for to care for your pet. If you're curious about your pet, then your vet wants you to know. Welcome to today's episode of Your Vet Wants You to Know. And today we're going to be talking about food allergies in dogs and cats. Allergies are one of the most common reasons that people bring their pet to the vet, and one of my favorite things to talk about. We talked about flea allergies in episode 1, and if you haven't listened to that already, I highly encourage you to go back, listen to the episode about fleas and flea allergies, because this is the most common type of dermatitis that we see in dogs and cats. We'll be taking a deeper look into other types of allergies, allergy medications, and secondary complications of allergies. I want to talk about one of my favorite patients, Cookie. Cookie and her owner are very special to me. Cookie is a young black lab, and like most black labs, she has boundless energy. When they came to see me for their first visit, her owner was frustrated because he'd been dealing with ear infections for many months. They were so bad that we wound up needing to do a deep ear cleaning and video otoscopy under anesthesia in order to remove all of that gunk that had built up in Cookie's ears. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're going to have lots of episodes coming up about ear infections. But it wasn't just enough for me to deep clean those ears and address the infection that she had. I talked to Cookie's owner about needing to get to the root cause of the infection so that they didn't return. We started an elimination diet trial to investigate food allergies and wound up diagnosing Cookie with severe food allergies. Over the course of many months, Cookie's owner and I worked together to do a lot of individual ingredient challenges to figure out exactly which proteins she could safely eat and which proteins would cause her ears to flare up. Now, when Cookie's owner wants to use a high-value treat to channel her energy into her agility training, he knows exactly which treats she can have. Cookie is one of my favorite food allergy patients because of how diligent her owner has been with investigating and managing her food allergies. So when we talk about clinical signs of the disease, especially when it comes to allergies, I'll describe to you what the most common signs are that are written about in textbooks. But I do like to warn pet owners that not all pets read the textbook. So some pets don't exactly fall into this classic description of clinical signs. Food allergies in dogs typically start as an itch, and the most common places for dogs with food allergies to be itchy are the paws, the belly, the face, and the ears, as well as their armpits. Some dermatologists like to say ears and rears for dogs with food allergies, but this has been disproven as dogs with environmental allergies can also have problems with their ears and their rears. But there are other places that animals can be itchy from food allergies. Cats in true cat form itch wherever they want, but it's not uncommon for me to see beautiful bald bellies in allergic cats, and that's because itchy cats more often manifest their itch by over-grooming rather than scratching and chewing like dogs do. Have you ever felt a cat's tongue? All those little barbs make for the perfect little scratching tool. It's impossible to tell the difference between an animal with a food allergy and an animal with environmental allergies based on where they are itchy on their body alone. And to complicate things even further, there are definitely allergic animals out there that can have both food allergies and environmental allergies. There are some things that can be helpful in making me more or less suspicious of food allergies versus environmental allergies, and that's things like age of onset, whether or not the animal also has gastrointestinal issues, and whether or not the itch is seasonal or non-seasonal. Most pets with food allergies, they'll start to develop signs when they're very young, often before a year old. However, food allergies can actually develop at any age, even in pets that have been fed the same food their entire life, or pets that have been on lots of different foods over the course of their life. So if I have an older pet that comes to me for allergies that's never been itchy before in its life, once I make sure that that itch is not coming from secondary infection and hormonal disease, then I'm going to strongly recommend an elimination diet trial to investigate food allergies. And we'll talk more about diet trials in just a moment. Gastrointestinal signs are also a strong indicator of an underlying food allergy. This can be things like soft stool, diarrhea, farts that can clear an entire room, or an increased frequency of poops. Most animals should poop once or twice a day. It is not normal for your animal to have 4 to 6 poops in a 24-hour period. You're going to run out of poop bags. Not all dogs with food allergies will have gastrointestinal signs, so just because they have normal poops doesn't mean that food allergies are not a possibility. And food allergies are generally non-seasonal since the food is usually the same throughout the course of the year. Environmental allergies can also be non-seasonal. So if an allergy is present year-round, it can either be due to food allergies or environmental allergies or both. While food allergies start as just an itch, it almost always develops into secondary bacterial or yeast infections in either the skin or the ears or both. That's usually when a lot of pet owners really start to notice that something's up. They'll keep bringing the pet back to the vet for an infection, which will improve while it's being treated. But then once the treatment stops, that infection comes back very, very quickly. This is the key point that I want to emphasize. Skin infections and ear infections are a secondary problem in animals with allergies. The reason the skin infections and ear infections occur is because the primary disease is not being addressed. And that primary disease is the allergy. While we have lots of tools for managing allergies, unfortunately, allergies are very rarely cured. If a pet owner stops providing treatment for the allergy, the itch will return and the infections will follow. That's why it's so important when I discuss ear infections and skin infections with pet owners that I emphasize that the primary disease must be managed. Otherwise, they'll continue to get frustrated that the infections keep coming back. Fortunately, Cookie's owner understood this, and since we've managed the food allergies, her ear infections have not come back. Most food allergies are going to be to a protein that's in the diet, and the most common proteins that are implicated in dogs and cats with food allergies are beef, chicken, fish, soy, egg, and dairy. Now, not all animals are allergic to all of these proteins, and those are just the most common ones that we see causing reactions in dogs and cats with food allergies. It is extremely rare to have a dog or cat that has a grain allergy, so please don't go out and switch your pet to a grain-free diet because of a concern for food allergies. It is very likely not going to do anything for a potential food allergy. There have been some risks associated with grain-free diets as far as diet-associated cardiomyopathy, which is a heart condition that these pets can acquire as a result of eating grain-free or boutique diets. I really wish that there was an easy way for me to diagnose food allergies. At the time that this is being recorded, there is no blood or saliva test for dog or cat food allergies. Please understand that there are blood and saliva tests for food allergies on the market, but at this time, the research has shown that these are not reliable in correlating clinical signs of food allergies. So please don't spend your money on those tests. The only definitive way to diagnose a food allergy in dogs and cats is by performing an elimination diet trial under the supervision of your veterinarian. During an elimination diet trial, a pet is fed a specific diet to which their immune system will not react. There are several different schools of thought as to which foods to feed, but they are most often going to be either a hydrolyzed protein diet or a novel protein diet. Now, hydrolyzed diets are prescription foods in which the original protein source is broken down into very, very short amino acid chains. Amino acids are like the building blocks of proteins. And when a protein is intact, the immune system recognizes that protein, and in animals with food allergies, an allergic response occurs. If the protein is broken down into short enough amino acid chains, the immune system can no longer recognize the protein, and therefore it cannot stimulate an allergic reaction. The same science of hydrolyzed diets is used to provide nutrition to babies that have a milk allergy using a hydrolyzed milk protein formula. Some dermatologists will also perform diet trials with novel protein diets, and a novel protein is a protein to which the animal's immune system has never been exposed. The immune system hasn't had a chance to develop an allergic reaction to the novel protein. Unfortunately, there has been some research to demonstrate that there's cross-reactivity between some of the common novel proteins used and the proteins to which most dogs and cats are commonly allergic to. There are several prescription novel protein diets available, or you can work with a veterinary nutritionist to formulate a home-cooked diet specific for your pet. I strongly caution against using over-the-counter diets that claim they're single protein or novel protein because there have been many studies showing contamination of other proteins in those over-the-counter diets. So even if you think that the only protein your pet is eating is say for instance salmon, based on the ingredients on the label. Several studies have shown that in up to 85% of diets that claim to be single ingredient or limited ingredient, those diets contain contaminant proteins that aren't listed on the list of their ingredients for that particular batch of food because they are processed on the same equipment in the facility as other batches of food that contain different proteins. So there is a possibility that the animal could be getting exposed to other proteins than what's listed on the bag. Whichever diet your veterinarian recommends for the elimination diet trial, it is important to understand that this diet is not changing the immune system. The food that they're recommending is going to provide your pet with nutrition while avoiding foods that could potentially be stimulating the immune system. Let me repeat that one more time because this is the key concept of an elimination diet trial. The prescription diet is providing nutrition while avoiding foods that could potentially be stimulating the immune system. If the pet has a food allergy, it's still there while they're eating this prescription food. The concept is that the prescription food doesn't stimulate an allergic reaction. So unfortunately, you can't mix other foods during the diet trial because the pet still has an allergy to those other foods. It's kind of like feeding a child with a peanut butter allergy almond butter and jelly sandwiches during the school week so that he has nutrition. You can't reward him with a Reese's peanut butter cup on the weekend. That peanut butter allergy is still there. It's just that the almond butter doesn't trigger a reaction. There's no mixing a little bit of chicken in with the prescription diet to encourage the dog to eat it. That dog is still potentially allergic to chicken. Now, the good news is the diet trial doesn't last forever. Depending on who you talk to, it typically lasts between 8 to 12 weeks. Now, because there is no blood or hair or saliva test that's effective in diagnosing food allergies, I try to explain to pet owners that this is a really long diagnostic test that they're performing for me at home. And at the end of the test, if we can show that that animal does not have a food allergy, then they can go back to feeding whatever makes their pet happy. But if they want the diet trial to be successful during those 8 to 12 weeks, no other food passes the animal's lips, and that includes foods used to give medications. So if you have a hard time giving medications to your animal without using things like cheese or hot dogs or peanut butter, please talk to your veterinarian about alternatives that can be used during the diet trial. I typically start by having pet owners soak some of the kibble from the prescription diet in warm water until it becomes mushy, and then put the pill into a makeshift meatball from the mushy kibble. This is the most ideal solution, but there are other solutions that you can talk to your family veterinarian about. Because it takes 6 to 8 weeks for itch to improve in animals with food allergies alone, I usually prescribe some type of anti-itch medication at the start of the diet trial to make sure that my patient is comfortable. And as we get closer to the end of the diet trial, I'd like to see how itchy they are without anti-itch medication. If the itch is still there at the end of the diet trial before we have introduced any of the previous foods that they were eating back into the routine, then I'm pretty confident the animal has environmental allergies. They could definitely still have food allergies as well. Usually by that time, any itch related to food allergies should have improved on the prescription diet. So any itch that's left over is environmental itch. With pets who have environmental allergies, I'll put them back on an anti-itch medication so that they're comfortable before I move forward with challenge feeding. If the itch is gone, then we move forward with our challenge feeding without any further medications to confirm our suspicion of food allergy. So with this 2 to 3 month diagnostic test that the pet owner is performing for me at home, it's important for them to understand that the diagnosis of a food allergy is not made by how much better the animal gets at the end of the diet trial, because they could still be allergic to things in the environment. The diagnosis of a food allergy is made by noticing how much worse an animal gets when you challenge feed them with something that they are allergic to. So what do I mean by challenge feeding? Well, it means reintroduction of a food that the animal was eating prior to starting the diet trial. Usually this is either the kibble that they were on, or if the pet owner is suspicious that in the past, maybe chicken has upset their pet's tummy, we may start by doing a single protein source. But in the beginning, I just want to know yes or no, is there a food allergy? Pets with a food allergy will typically start to react within 2 to 5 days of a food to which they are allergic being introduced into the diet. However, there are some pets that will react within just a few hours, and some that can take up to 2 weeks. That reaction can involve things like an increase in itch or redness, swelling of the skin, paws, face, or ears. Some animals will have gastrointestinal signs like soft stool, a loud stomach gurgling, or that room clearing gas that we were talking about before. Food allergies are typically less responsive to anti-itch medications than environmental allergies. So oftentimes, even if an animal is receiving an anti-itch medication for their environmental allergies, if we give them a food that they're highly allergic to, the anti-itch medication that easily controls that environmental allergy may have a harder time controlling the patient's allergic reaction to the food that they are allergic to. If there's no reaction after 2 weeks, then depending on how strict the owner was during the diet trial and how confident I am in the particular diet that was used, I usually say we're safe to rule out food allergies as an underlying cause of itch in their animal. If that's the case, we can go back to feeding whatever makes their pet happy, and we'll move on to addressing environmental allergies, which we'll talk about in future episodes. If a food allergy is present, then I work with the client to figure out which proteins are safe and which ones cause a reaction. And that can take a lot of time, trial and error to do. I'm a really big fan of spreadsheets, and this is where they come in super handy. Not every pet owner wants to do this, and that's okay. Some animals get really, really uncomfortable when they have an allergic reaction to food. So once the pet owner knows that food is the cause, if the animal likes the diet that they're on, it's okay to stay on that diet indefinitely if it's a diet that's formulated for maintenance feeding. Other owners want more information so that they can add other foods into their pet's diet that won't cause a reaction. Usually these pets have an allergic reaction that's easier to get back under control. So Cookie's dad was awesome at doing individual ingredient challenges, and we were able to find out which proteins he could use when going to obedience and agility class with her. Long-term treatment of food allergies involves avoidance of the protein that stimulates an allergic reaction. Therefore, I usually recommend a prescription diet so I can feel confident knowing that there are no contaminant proteins that could stimulate an allergic reaction. If the pet owner really wants to feed a non-prescription food that they've tried and hasn't caused an allergic reaction during the challenge feeding, I have them watch very, very closely for any reactions occurring within the first week of opening a new bag of food, just in case that particular batch may have been contaminated with protein sources from other batches of food being processed on the same equipment. Allergy medications like steroids, Apoquel, Cytopoint, Atopica, Zenrelia, lots of different anti-itch medications out there can be used to control the reactions if a pet eats something that they're allergic to. But with food allergies, it typically takes higher doses of these medications in order to calm the allergic reaction down. Therefore, it's important to address the underlying cause of the allergic reaction with avoidance rather than just using more and more medications to treat the reaction. So to sum things up for you, allergies are a chronic skin and ear condition, and unfortunately, they require lifelong management. Effective flea prevention is critical for any patient with allergic skin disease, and it's really tough to tell the difference between food allergies and environmental allergies based on the appearance of the animal alone. So working with your veterinarian to figure out what the primary cause is will go a really long way towards minimizing your frustration. It's possible for animals to have both food and environmental allergies, making a prescription elimination diet trial under the supervision of a veterinarian important for a definitive diagnosis. Itch and inflammation from allergies can be managed using a symptomatic medication, things like steroids, Apoquel, Cytopoint, Zenrelia, Atopica, other anti-inflammatory drugs. And we'll talk about these medications in upcoming episodes, so make sure you subscribe. Long-term management of food allergies is through avoidance of the protein to which the animal is allergic by using a prescription diet. I'd like you to visit our Facebook group, Your Vet Wants You to Know, to share pictures of your allergic animals and share your success stories with diet trials that you've undergone. If you'd like to visit the website, yourvetwantsyouToknow.com, you can see pictures of dogs and cats with allergies in the episode notes from today, as well as references. You can also sign up for the email list to receive a really fun allergies infographic. And if you're concerned about allergies in your pet, please talk to your family veterinarian about options or visit yourvetwantsyouToknow.com for a link where you can find a specialty veterinary dermatologist near you. If you are local to Los Angeles and would like to come visit me at Veterinary Skin and Ear, I'd love to take a look at your dog so we can figure out their allergies together. I'm a big fan of golden retrievers and cats as well. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to your next visit with Your Vet Wants You to Know.